My name is Caroline Woodward, and I live now in New Denver. And I will be reading at the end of this talented array of female writers and musicians that we have on tap for you today. And I would like to begin by acknowledging the tremendous back-scenes work done by Sandra Hartline, who has for years run the literary salon, worked tirelessly for the Kootenay School of Writing, been a freelancer active in environmental and feminist issues, all around good person, too modest by half, and she's going to be keeping the cowbell, because behind that shy, retiring exterior is a machine. And our reading limit today is 20 minutes max, and Sandra's cowbell will alert you to your excessive verbiage. Sandra, can we give you a hand, and can we hear the bell? Stand, please. Great, thank you. All right, without further ado, I would like to ask a poet from Grand Forks called Georgina to begin with the word, because in the beginning was the word. So, Georgina.
I have two short poems. The first one is an honoring, and it's simply called Woman. Woman, oh woman, what mysteries hold thee? Blessed by the goddess, her image you be. Ruled by the moon, her cycles you bleed. Crimson and silver, ancient alchemy. Praise the Holy Trinity. Maiden, mother, crone, all three. Woman, oh woman, what mysteries hold thee? My second poem is called A Woman's Thing, and this poem is going to be published in the Canadian Woman's Journal, Canadian Studies Woman Journal out of York University. It's a woman's thing that needs doing this dull gray summer's day. A putting to an end that which grows in flesh, conceived in a moment of thoughtless lust. Minutes tick by as mother and daughter prepare to journey to a place where the unborn die unwanted. This is a thing of pain, too deep to linger for long. The thought of the deed, too brutal to dwell upon. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Georgina. Next, I'm happy to introduce someone I know as a writer and works with people in her community of Caslow, and she's also a feminist musician. And I would like you to welcome Marilyn Wolovic to the stage.
Hi there. This first song I'm going to do is a song I heard when I was about 18 and a half years old and just a newly born feminist, women's liberationist we called it back then. And I went to one of my first women's events, and a woman stood up and sang this song, and it was a story in song form, and she had no backup musicians. She just got up, and it was just her and the microphone, and I was completely in awe and transfixed, and I listened, hung on every word that she said. And about 6 years ago or so, I came across a recording of it by Claudia Schmidt, and so I quickly decided to learn it, and so that I could share it with others. So it's called Horse Thief. Come listen a while and I'll sing you a song of three merry gentlemen riding along. They spied a fair maid and to her did say, "We'll afraid this cold morning will do you some harm. Oh no, kind sir, said the maid, you're mistaken, to think this cold morning will do me some harm. There's one thing I crave, and it lies twixt your legs. If you will give me that, it will keep me warm. Well then, since you crave it, my dear, you shall have it, if you'll come with me to yonder green tree. Well then, since you crave it, my dear, you shall have it, I'll make these two gentlemen witness to be. So the gentleman lighted, and straightways she mounted, and looking the gentleman hard in the face, saying, you knew not my meaning, you wrong understood me. And away she went galloping down the long lane. Oh, gentlemen, lend me one of your horses, that I may ride after her down the long lane. If I overtake her, I warrant I'll make her return unto me my own horse again. But soon as this fair maid she saw him a-comin', she instantly then took her pistol in hand, saying, doubt not my skill, that you I would kill. I'd have you stand back, or you are a dead man. So why do you spend your time here in talking? And why do you spend your time here in vain? Come, give her a guinea, it's what she deserves, and I warrant she'll give you your horse back again. Oh no, kind sirs, you're vastly mistaken. If it is his loss, well, it is my gain. And you were a witness that he gave it to me. And away she went galloping over the plain.
Such a great story.
This next song, I've heard Holly Near perform, and it's in honor of the disappeared women in Chile. The chorus of it, you're probably familiar with it, a lot of you. The chorus of it is a repetition of the names of some of the women who've been disappeared. And it's a way of honoring their spirits and feeling one with them and sending out hope to particularly the women in Chile, but I think of it as all women in the world who are suffering. Hay una mujer desaparecida. Hay una mujer desaparecida en Chile, en Chile, en Chile. And the junta knows, and the junta knows where she is, and the junta knows where they are hiding her. She's dying. Hay una mujer desaparecida. Hay una mujer desaparecida en Chile, en Chile, en Chile. Michelle Peña Herrera, Navia Rosa Peña Alvarado, Cecilia Castro Salvadores, Ida Amelia Marza. Hay una mujer desaparecida Chile, en Chile, en Chile. Clara Helena Cantero, Elisa del Carmen Escobar, Aliana Maria Espinosa, Rosa Elena Morales. Hay una mujer desaparecida, hay una mujer desaparecida en Chile, en Chile, en Chile. One more, and I need my drum for that one, so I'm just going to go and get it. I was a shy and lonely girl with the heavens in my eyes, and as I walked along a lane, I heard the echoes of her cries. I cannot fight, I cannot a warrior be. It's not my nature nor my teaching, it is the womanhood in me. I was a lost and angry youth. There were no tears in my eyes. I saw no justice in my world, only the echoes of her cries. I cannot fight, I cannot a warrior be. It's not my nature nor my teaching, it is the womanhood in me. I am an older woman now, and I will heed my own cries, and I will a fierce warrior be, till not another woman dies. I can and will fight, I can and will a warrior be. It is my nature and my duty, it is the sisterhood in me. I can and will fight, I can and will a warrior be. It is my nature and my duty, it is the sisterhood in me. Thank my friend Leanne Myers, who's sitting back there, who helped me make this women's drum.
We've got two strong voices to start us off here. This is wonderful. The Women's Festival has been a place for many years through the open mic offerings where many of us read for the first time or played for the first time, and it gave us courage to see smiling faces, and even if we were pretty awful, it was a very supportive and jolly place to say what we needed to say. And I have a wonderful vintage photograph of me, braless, when I didn't sag so much, and a little strappy thing, and my little hairy armpit in the air, going like this with a headband on. It's of a certain vintage, shall we say. But my friends, and you are many, cheered me on, God knows why. So it worked, it's a great place to read. So is Diana, my friend here, she lost in the wilds of Vatican. Well, you know what, we're going to proceed next with Anne Alma. And Anne has been alerted to this, while my friend Diana finds the Vatican hole again. And I will just find Anne's very nicely done bio. Many of you know Anne. In fact, I think she was the foremother of the actual literary cabaret here 5 years ago, establishing it as a separate event for the Women's Festival, and it's been a big hit. So I'd like to thank Anne for starting this off. Most of you know Anne. She's that Dutch woman with lots of opinions. And she's here now after spending most of her life teaching. And she's taught in public school, private school, aerobics to music when it was the in thing to do, taught canoeing, downhill skiing in Holland, Canada, Japan, and New Zealand. She's worked as a chambermaid, did a stint as a social worker in Holland with seniors, and harvested potatoes and apples and waited on tables. In short, the usual writer's background. Rounded up motherless lambs and bottle fed them in New Zealand. It's wonderful. All of this to try and catch time to write and to be in the world. 7 years ago, Anne semi-retired and became a writer, mostly of children's novels, and she's just been wonderfully successful at that. She doesn't say that, but I would happily say that for her. She now makes her living as a writer, which is a tricky business to do, and does many author visits to schools and libraries around Canada. Her books include Skateway to Freedom, which is one of my favorite juvenile kids books in the store. Sold another one just yesterday, and just so you know, you have another 10% royalty coming your way. Oh, 70 cents! 70 cents. Don't spend it all in one place. And it's coming out this summer, and it's 4th printing, which is a wonderful thing when your book is in demand and it keeps coming into printing. And it won an Our Choice Award from the Children's Book Center and was nominated for the Silver Birch Award. And this is very special. It's like the Red Cedar Award in BC. The Silver Birch comes from Ontario, and it's when children, thousands of children across the province, they've been the readers and nominated your book. So that's what the Silver Birch and the Red Cedar are about the next time you see those awards. Under Emily's Sky, which is a lovely story which features Emily Carr, as you might have guessed, is coming out again in 2nd printing this summer. And Something to Tell, which was Anne's 2nd Our Choice Award, came out last year, or the award came out last year. And I saw her the morning after she had just finished her 4th novel, Summer of Changes. And that went off to her publisher, and she was happy and tired simultaneously. She's also published many travel stories for travel magazines, as well as some poems and short stories, one of which won the Ontario Peel Prose First Prize. Now today, Anne Alma is going to read from an unpublished travelogue of her 14-month trip around the world. So could we please welcome Anne Alma.
Now, when I get carried away with reading, this is for Catherine, a private message. When I get carried away, I get louder and louder and louder. Just to give you an idea. Part of my teacher training. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Sandra, for this opportunity. And as Caroline said, I'm going to read from my travelogue, which is unpublished. It's one of these. I have 2 adult things sitting in the bottom drawer. Most people have 1. I have 2. I dabble with it from time to time, and the second piece I'm going to read, I have dabbled with many times, and still I'm not happy with. But I'm beginning to get happier to send it off. I used to write travel articles for US and Canadian travel magazines. While I was putting some of my travelogue on the computer one day, I got a small gift from above in the form of a poem, so I'll read that to you first. The skylight overhead is suddenly darkened by a bird's deposit. I'm glad elephants don't fly. So here's the first story passage. Can you hear me if I read here, or is it better on a mic? I can hear myself breathing.
Well, we can hear you breathing.
Okay.
Listen, I'll turn your monitor down, then you won't be able to hear yourself breathing.
Turn my heart down and I'll be fine. Passage. It's too dangerous. The highway to Kootenay hasn't been open long enough, my host in Penang, Malaysia, advised. Because it's close to the border with Thailand, communist terrorists who've been hiding there for years come down from the mountains. They burn vehicles and kill people. But the ticket salesman at the depot reassured me. Bus only go daytime. Pass close at 4 p.m. He pointed to a schedule on the wall. Look, you be Kootenay at 3:30. Be many soldier, you be safe. I decided to go as planned. At the crowded depot, people pushed into throngs, spreading like fans from the ticket booths, while others elbowed through travelers, stepped over suitcases, boxes, bags, and bundles, or live fowl, tied together at the feet and bunched like sheaves. Large engines belched exhaust onto the vendors, who rang bells, tapped on pieces of metal, banged lids on pots, or yelled out their wares. Since I had bought my ticket a day earlier, my seat was reserved. The bus, one of the newer vehicles at the depot, displayed a jumping deer set in a blue racing stripe on a freshly painted white background. It was clean, even air-conditioned, so I climbed on board to find my window seat. We left at 9:30 a.m. A young male Malay sat next to me. He asked me something in Bahasa, which I didn't understand, so I told him I was from Canada. But shrugging, he took out his newspaper and didn't give me another glance. Across the aisle sat two younger men, their eyes stabbing disapproval. Behind me, two older Chinese men, one leaning back with his mouth open, sleeping, the other slumped in a fetal position against the window. Across from them, two Malay males read. Further back stretched a rectangle of male heads, some with friendly expressions, others giving me looks that made me thankful for my front seat. Suddenly I realized I was the only woman on the vehicle. The load consisted of about 50 Malay and Chinese men. I had seen families on the buses from Kuala Lumpur to Penang, so why not here? Maybe it really was dangerous on this road. But as we raced east, with the speedometer needle flopping helplessly on the right side of the gauge past 160 kilometers an hour, it was too late for me to change my mind. We reached the mountains of the interior, where small villages and plantations flanked the new highway, which was uncommonly wide and free of potholes. At a checkpoint, we vacated the bus with our luggage. Soldiers scrutinized every personal item, from sarongs to sandals spread out along the road. They rifled through my toiletries, ripped open a Tampax, checked my toothpaste, and dumped my bottle of vitamins onto a cloth. When no weapons were found, they allowed us to continue into the pass. Now the road wound around outcroppings, into valleys, up hills, along small streams and across rivers, while armed soldiers occupied the roadsides at every bend. The bridges were particularly heavily guarded and protected with walls of sandbags. At 11:30 a.m., trouble started. A car passed the bus, honked, and the occupants gestured to the driver, who stopped. After the assistant walked around the bus, he yelled something, creating a pandemonium which surpassed the chicken's clamor from the luggage rack. Everyone jumped up and hurried out. I tried to join the flow of bodies, but male elbows and knees prevented me from doing so until, as the last person, I jumped down to see what caused all this commotion. I expected at least a fire or a bomb, but all I found was a crowd of men examining a flat tire. The assistant found the jack in a spare wheel, lowered himself to the ground, and started cranking the bus's hind end up. At least that was the plan. But the jack, too small for the weight of the vehicle, wouldn't lift it. Several men tried unsuccessfully. A second bus pulled up, adding another crowd of gesturing and yelling passengers to the scene. A truck and several cars stopped, as well as a jeep loaded with soldiers. There were now enough men on the scene to lift the bus manually into the air, I thought. But I didn't suggest this because, being the only woman, I stayed well back in the shade and watched. After they tried several larger levers without success because the hot pavement just gave way, someone produced a plank on which the men set a row of lifting devices. They elevated the bus, replaced the wheel, heatedly discussed the event one last time, wiped their faces, returned the jacks, kicked dirt into all the holes in the pavement, and continued on their journey. Not 5 minutes later, we turned off the highway and up a sloping side path to stop in the dust. With even greater excitement, everybody jostled their way off the bus again. I followed, but could discover nothing wrong, until a man said, "Brakes blocked." "What happens now?" I asked. He pointed to the assistant who had just flagged down a car. "He will get man to fix brakes. We wait here." He turned, indicating that the conversation had terminated. The tropical sun was overhead, so the best place to wait out this delay was in the vehicle, where the air conditioning was still going. I read for a while, ate my lunch, read again, then walked around the bus a few times. A truckload of soldiers helped the mechanic with the brakes. Sweat and dust mixed on their clothes, hands, and faces. Around 5 o'clock a cheer rose. The brakes were fixed. The bus could continue on its journey. But then came the bad news. The soldiers had closed the pass at 4 p.m. and no traffic was allowed to move until daybreak the next morning. Soldiers escorted the bus a few miles up the road to a small cafe. The owners of the shack, little prepared for such a crowd at that time, did their best to supply us with food. While it lasted, they served the rice and fried eggs, but when that ran out, only tea and soft drinks were left. I bought some rice with one oily egg. Although I was very thirsty, I didn't want to drink too much because I couldn't find a toilet anywhere, even though my need for one was increasing. For the men, the lack of this facility created no problem. They enriched the soil anywhere. When I walked to a stand of trees, an armed soldier accompanied me. Grinning, he gestured to the trees and said something in Bahasa, but I had no desire to go off into the woods with him. Finally, I managed to get the attention of a reticent cafe owner who led me to a small, partly screened room and pointed to a hole in the floor and a bucket of water. I didn't mind the stench nor the slime underfoot. Meanwhile, a few truckloads of soldiers had pulled up. After they directed the bus onto an open area, they ordered everyone back into the vehicle immediately. While the sudden, dustless, tropical night enfolded us, the guards unloaded and stacked sandbags at the four corners of the bus. Behind these barricades, they took their position, about 12 riflemen in all, the guns at the ready. Another dozen of their comrades stayed at the cafe. Those standing guard took their task seriously. They allowed no one off the bus, stayed attentive, and never smiled. I stayed awake for most of the night, listening to loud snoring, watching for movements outside in the dark, and trying not to concentrate on my protesting bladder. At the first sign of light, some soldiers removed the sandbags while others lingered for a while. They talked to the passengers as they spread out in the field to urinate. I walked over to the shack and was allowed to use the back hole. Finally, the soldiers gave our driver the okay while they moved onto the highway ahead of us, their guns ready from the windows. The sun bubbled out of the cloudy horizon like a giant blood-red drop. Except for the roaring engine, we heard no sounds as we moved around each curve and across each heavily guarded bridge. Suddenly the helper threw up his arms and shouted something in Bahasa. With stiffened legs, I tried to pull myself out of visibility, my sweaty hands slipping on the seat. Then shouts and laughter rang out. The driver slapped the assistant's shoulder while the tape deck started crackling a song. We had passed the danger zone. We had crossed the last bridge. The sun peeped out over the fog-filled valley, transforming silhouetted grays into lush shades of green. We reached Kootenay in the late morning. When I left the depot, two small children walked up, smiled shyly, and handed me a maroon bougainvillea. I dried the flower in my journal. The second story, the one I'm playing with, the second story, what I've done with it at this point, and myself, although I'm highly biased, of course, think it's kind of cute this way, but I've taken it out of first person, which is I, you know, and I've put it into second person, singular, which is you. So that's how I'm going to read it to you. You walked along the wide sandy beach as the sky's edge yawned to let the pink, then red, then golden light of the morning sun onto the world of Fiji. Rivulets barred here and there by rocks created tidal pools where small organisms waved, sucked, squirted nature's rhythmic patterns. At a wider stream, you walked barefoot until sharp coral and barnacles necessitated shoes, and sloshing water with each step, you squelched on, your heart lost to your heart. After wandering for several miles along this isolated stretch of the island's plinth, you noticed Fijian women, dressed in ragged, faded sulus, well-worn shirts and cloths wrapped around their heads. The women slowly filled their sacks or baskets as they searched, stooped and prodded for delicacies in the pool. Occasionally one indicated a find by a quick stab with a probing stick, followed by a triumphant laugh. "Bula!" they greeted, as you walked from one to the next to peek at their finds. You couldn't converse with any of them, but several women eagerly showed their treasures, among which were shell creatures, small crabs, urchins, and even a sea snake. You wandered further along the beach until around the bend were out of sight and in the private beauty of sugarcane fields, sand and waves. Partaking in the beauty was an unspoken delight, a joining in all that was offered. Upon your return to the gatherer's beach, from a blazing fire under the palm tree, the women gestured and suddenly a delegation of young ones dashed towards you, bare feet striking sharp rocks. They took your arms and led you to their camp, indicating that you should join in their outing. One woman spread a gunny sack on the sand under a palm tree. Another brought a coconut full of water for you to wash your hands, while she unwrapped her head covering to use as a towel. By the fire, some of the women were rinsing the beach harvest. They threw some squirming critters directly into the hot coals and held others, including the snake, on sticks in the flames. They tapped, poked, and turned the morsels from time to time. Soon the women seated themselves with the catch of the day, hot, grilled, and cooked in ashes, arranged on banana leaf plates, along with handfuls of pre-cooked, slightly curried rice, pieces of pre-cooked cold fish, and cassava. Everyone looked at you, so you formed a small bowl of rice, popped it into your mouth, chewed, swallowed, smiled, said, and licked your lips. The rewards were overwhelming. Women laughed, pointed to your plate, moved closer, stroked your arms, and started eating. You commenced on the seafood. As you tried each one, you couldn't help thinking about the creatures that such a short while ago scurried for cover, buried in the sand, or swam rapidly around the tidal pools. But at the same time, you indicated your delight to the hostesses. You bit, chomped, gnashed the sea snake, perhaps an eel, between your molars. The octopus, with its entangling arms, was chewy. The pleasure of eating the miniature crabs was intense. You crammed them into your mouth, shell and all, where you cracked them, sucked in the meat, and spit out the shells. Suddenly rain fell as if from nowhere on the picnic, and the lights went out. Can't see. It did not bother the Fijians, but one of the women wrapped her headgear skillfully around your hair, covering her own curls with the cloth used to carry the rice pot. All the while the women laughed easily and readily while they pointed to you. Occasionally one leaned over to feel your hair and stroke your skin. You in turn felt free to reach out and touch them. For dessert, the women led you to the sugarcane field. A machete flashed. Someone cut the cane into foot-long pieces and handed it out. You chewed sweet moisture. They searched for words to communicate and handed you a stick to draw pictures in the sand. You drew lines, solitary, direct ones at first, then oblique messages that crossed theirs, intertwining, overlapping, germinating from confusion into abstract clarity. You held hands, danced around the beach together, your feet following theirs, their feet following yours, your voice following their song, their laughter. The water crept up, higher, higher onto the beach, covering the sand, the stage, the messages. They gathered up their clothes, baskets, pots, and called "Bula!" Waving, they walked into the tall sugarcane fields. You turned back to your hotel, the offering forever in your heart. Thank you.
I'm happy to say that my friend Diana has arrived. And so I'm going to introduce her, to give her time to come up to the front. I don't have my driving glasses on, so I can't see her. Anyway, Diana Hartog, who lives in New Denver, moved to the Kootenays in 1971 and began to write in 1975. She joined a local writers group which included Fred Waugh and Pauline Butling, a group which was crucial to her sense of place and community. When the Four Horsemen came to Nelson, through Nelson, from Toronto, she happened to be reading that night and was asked by B.P. Nichol if she had a manuscript. Well, she had a lot of poems, and they added up to about 40 pages. And because of this stroke of luck, she says she has no advice on how to find a publisher. Great story. Diana has written 3 books of poetry. Every single one has either won or been nominated for prizes, including the Gerald Lampert Award for Best First Book of Poems for Matinee Light. And she has won the BC Poetry Prize. And anyways, she's just an immaculate craftsperson with her work. She's done a lot of public readings in Canada and also in the States, I think. And then she holed up after writing poetry and wrote for 10 years worked on a novel. And she doesn't recommend it because it's too much work. And she was rewarded, if not with fame and riches, with good reviews, with Kirkus Reviews in the States dubbing it a novel at once so riveting and disquieting that it may well prove unforgettable.
What's it called?
It's called Photographer's Sweethearts. In his Critic's Choice at the year's end, Philip Marchand wrote in the Toronto Star, BC poet Diana Hartog's The Photographer's Sweethearts may be the year's most disturbing and powerful historical novel. The narrator, Louis Olsen, is a Danish immigrant to California around the turn of the century. A shrewd, resourceful, charismatic figure with new age ideas and profound spiritual qualities. He is also a vicious pedophile. In the Globe and Mail said, Hartog's Louis is all too believable, and his story has the inevitability of true tragedy. Why would you want to read this book? Because it is both beautiful and moral. And Diana will be reading from The Photographer's Sweethearts today. So if we could welcome Diana to the front here.
Why should you read this book? Because I beg you to read this book. That would be great.
Yeah, we can do that.
If you can.
Sure.
Thank you. And am I being heard?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now can I? Yes. Okay. Hello. I can't see anybody. There I can. It's really nice to be here. My memories of being down at this end of the valley are very dear to me, especially because of the group, writers group that we had during the 80s, I guess it was. Late 70s and 80s, and Fred Waugh and everybody else in that group. It was really important to me, and I wish sometimes that we still had it, except I get impatient in writers groups now. I just want to be back in my studio. But I'm going to read you just 2 poems. I come originally from California, from an area near San Andreas, and there's the San Andreas Jumping Frog Jubilee, you might have heard of, through Mark Twain. So this is called Frog Contest. False fronts, saloons, the noisy crowd suddenly quiet as the starter gun points skyward, ready, foiled by a green contestant's false start. Next. Playing leapfrog, the boy crouches, tailbone tucked. Mention of a dragon in Japanese linked verse is limited to once every 1,000 stanzas. No restrictions on frogs. Freed by a kiss, he lowers himself into the cool muck. These are all contestants, you realize. The tiny tree frog squatting on the welcome mat as the door opening skims above his spine is clearly relative to the one squished under a guest's wooden clog last summer and the one flattened against the doorpost by a slam. Endangered, still he hangs around the mini-climate of deck chairs and potted plants. Sometimes at night he presses his pale belly up against the window as someone might squash their nose to repulse and impress. In daylight he clings to various guises, split frond, green lounge chair, a magazine on gardening, as if in hopes of being entered in a contest. Famous for his jump into that ancient Japanese pond, he floats motionless among reeds, hind legs dangling, obscure. As applause swells for the hypnotist, the frog leaps from the stage to regain his seat in the second row, where he sinks down, warts and all, and reaches for his wife's hand. 2-week vacation, potted plants from the deck, crowding the sink, tap dripping, and a tiny croak in the empty kitchen. This is my feminist poem, based on the very famous poem Read and the Swan. The couple in room 212. The TV flickers mute, the remote knocked to the orange shag carpet by a wing. Lita, sprawled naked across the sheets, mind a blank, stares up at the ceiling's watermarks, turns her head to the high window and the plucked moon above the motel, blows a puff of swan's down from the ashtray, spies the pillows flung to far corners, thank Jupiter for maid service. No need to pick up after him in here or in the bathroom where he treads damp towels and hisses in the steam. Now, I can either read you a chapter from this book, the novel, which is trying to get you to buy the novel here today, which I have good price. Or, if it won't take away from you buying the novel, I can read you a new story. So,
new story!
New story, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of set around here, but don't forget this. And I also have some poetry books. I also am selling some wood. This is sort of set here, but you will, the geography is all screwed up, so don't hold that against it. But this was told, this particular little nut in here was told to me by someone, I don't remember who, but somebody told me, and I set it up at the Bluffs in my mind. It's called Ed, of all people. When my cousin fell down the well, right out there in your yard where that oak's growing now, my auntie was running back and forth, crying, all panicky your son was dead. And you know what your granddaddy did? What your granddaddy did? He ran out, he just rolled up his sleeve, lied down flat in his stomach, cheek to the dirt, thrust his arm down the throat of that well, his fingers fumbling for my cousin's cowlick. Is that true? And now that oak's taken over the rescue, got its roots down there deep, still groping around, trying to save him and get all the credit. That's not true. Yes, it is. Trees are opportunists. A tree can get a footing in the crack of a boulder and lean out over a precipice like the Bluffs, the 2,000-foot drop, not be afraid. A little pine, scrawny, kind of like you, hair sticking up. Not like me. A guy will be driving along to Nelson, he stops at the bluff, gets out to take a look, take a pee, unzips, scarcely noticing the scrawny thing below, clinging to the side of the rock face. No! Yep, that's how that little pine gets watered. I've done the same thing myself. It's a great feeling, all that sky and the lake so far below, it shimmers like a mirage. I know what a mirage is. But you got to pull well over on that narrow curve if you're going to stop. And there wasn't any guard wall to speak of back when I was a kid, not in Canada. You take the States, any little drop off, they put up a 5-foot wall. That kind of thinking was slow to work its way north, coddling the ordinary citizen as if he can't look after himself. Or herself. Thank you, miss. Yeah, there's always somebody going to step too close to the edge, especially the young of the species. Nowadays, they'll climb that new concrete guard wall and stand puffing on a cigarette as if they liked it. Let me tell you, too, a question. Either of you old enough to ever fly in your dreams, no airplane holding you up? You familiar with what I'm talking about? I don't know. Just that little seed in the crack of your mind, thinking the air might hold you up. It makes you more careless than you might be otherwise. That orange you're eating, see how the orange divides itself up, separate pieces, so you can eat one piece at a time? The same between dreams and what's real. No, follow me on this. There's a thin membrane, you see it? What was the pine tree's name? Name? Pine tree? Names are for people and dogs. You're going to name every tree growing in the forest? But the pine tree was all by itself. You think it deserved a name to keep it company? No. You're going to name him now, posthumous? Because for all I know, that tree's long gone, died of thirst. I haven't been back to pee on it since I was little more than a kid like you. Hand me that. There's too much naming going on, period. Naming a tornado Ethel or Gertrude or Bob, that all started in the States. It's disrespectful, for one thing, calling one of God's storms by its first name as if you and that whirling, shrieking dervish were best friends. You name something, you belittle it, hoping to make it littler than yourself. Maybe we should forget names altogether. We'll start off dispensing with middle names. What's yours? Your middle name. You. Guess. How am I supposed to know your middle name? Mary. Mother of God. You take God. Nobody can put a name on him. God is a name. You got it wrong. God is like uncle. Could be anyone. For now it's me sitting on your front porch, your Uncle Pete. Mister, maybe we should cease naming pets. Call a dog, dog. Likewise, a tornado, tornado. And just leave it at that. One storm leaves, another slips into its place. I'm cold. What's that supposed to mean? I don't know. When a female says something like that, it means she wants you to do something. So what is it? What do you want me to do? Stop talking so you won't miss anything? Shall I wait until you get a sweater? Hurry up. Anything I say now has got to be nothing interesting. A hard thing to manage on purpose. And bring me back another cold one of these. You think your sister knows the meaning of hurry? Mama will get mad. Your mama's always been mad at me. She will. Come over here. See this scar? Yeah. You check out on your mama's wrist. You're going to see its twin. We had a pact going a long time ago. Ever heard of a lover's leap? Promised you wouldn't talk about anything interesting. I'm not. We're just killing time here. You check it out. Any country. They speak Japanese or Hindu or whatever, no matter. There's going to be a lover's leap. And the story's going to go something like, two young lovers, their folks disapproved them getting married, so they leapt off the highest cliff around. Holding hands, of course, so they'd always be together, even in death. What have you been talking about? Same thing, honey, thank you very much. We've been talking about names. You take Mary, your mother's name, my name. There you go, she thinks the name's hers alone. Anybody else called Mary, even her mother, it's not the same as her being married. Give it some thought here. There's been centuries of marry this, marry that, millions of females. All of them only like water flowing through a creek named Mary. Humans are mostly water. Mr. Smarty Pants, eh? Show Sis the scar. Where? Show me, Uncle Pete. He's not really our uncle. What would be a real uncle then? Someone who comes around a lot, like Uncle Mac. Mac? Shit. Pardon my French. Is he coming here today? He and Aunt Lou always come to Sunday lunch, after church. No such thing. Mac goes to church? The Anabaptist. You spell that for me? Never mind. I'll bet you're the kind of kid who can spell vacuum, right? Will you show me your scar? You want to see a scar, little lady? Hold this. Inside here under these ribs, I got a big fist of scar tissue. Used to be my heart. I forgot. Mama said, tell him that's the last beer till lunch. What's your mama doing in there? Making biscuits. What's a lover's leap? That's what your mama and I did not take, and the fault was hers. She looked down. You're supposed to look at each other when you step off. But no, Mary always had to know exactly what was going to happen, how things were going to turn out, and who the hell knows that? Sorry. But who could have known she'd be still so pretty after 15 years? Did you really sleep out here last night? Honey, last night I was passed out. That's not the same as sleep.
Yeah.
Weren't you cold? I'm never cold. Feel my hand. Go ahead, boy. Yeah, that is what is called a high metabolism. You learned that word yet? It means that my furnace is turned up high. Women won't sleep with me. I can't even hardly stand any covers. Daytime, I can't even take wearing a hat. Why did you sleep out here? Hush. Is that your mama crying? That's the country station. Oh, yeah. Why did I sleep out here? I'm not sure. I kind of surprised myself waking up on Mary's porch. It's just like our old porch next door. Must have been the same contractor. Mrs. Bigger lives over there now. I don't know any Mrs. Bigger. Think she'd take me in? How old is this lady? Say, would you like that me living next door same as I used to? Is that really true what you said about your cousin falling in the well? First off, do you know where that well got its water? From the ground. Just like that, from the ground. Think, boy. There's a lake just 2 blocks from here, a deep lake. Nobody's ever measured clear to the bottom. That makes it a bottomless lake so far. And all the driller has to do is drill down far enough like till the lake gets curious and starts filling up the well. Then why was it empty? Who knows? The lake got bored. There's lots more shoreline now. The water's dropped since I was growing up. It's all flowing downhill to the States. Did you see him dead? Who? Your cousin. Hell, my cousin's been in more scrapes than a cat. I saw him at the reunion last night. A fat cat is what you call him now. He's starting to lose his hair. That's one thing, I still got a full head of hair. Then why did you say he died? Did I say that? You said he died and his mother was crying. She was crying all right, and he could work it up. You think you could slip back into the house and get me another beer? Stay here, Cess, I'll go. Your brother's quite a little gentleman. Does he treat you right? Yes. Does your daddy treat your mama right? Never mind. Forget I asked. Of course he does. I saw them dancing last night, real close. Everybody pretending to be high school sweethearts again. You know, on TV they've got those ads about women wanting to lose weight for their high school reunion. Drink this, do that. Well, most of those girls last night had ignored all advice. You couldn't catch me dancing with a single one of them. Just your mama. She danced with me a couple of turns. She loved me, you know. She always loved me. And the minute I showed up at Auntie's, a stone's throw from this porch. Get me one of those pebbles, please. Now let's see if I'm telling it straight. You hit the roof. She loves me still, you know. She never stopped. To her, I'm still that little orphan boy come to live next door. That very first week, she had me playing house, drinking tea out of a little teensy cup with nothing in it. When you take someone in like that, playing house, you don't just let them walk away without saying goodbye. She should have sat me down at that damn little table of hers and tied me to the chair. Somebody should have tied me to a chair. Sis! What? Come inside. All right. Now! Hey, where you going? My dad says you have to leave. Why can't he tell me himself? I don't know. I haven't finished telling you about my dog. Yeah, that's right, Mr. Smarty Pants. I had a dog once. Well, maybe that's not exactly true. He belonged to Auntie and Uncle Val. But he was mine the minute I walked in and saw him lying there, shedding on the rug. You know, it's simple. A dog belongs to the person who loves him the most. Let's just call him decency. Hey, where you going? What's the matter? Yeah, Ed. He should have been called Dog. Just Dog. I walked in that door. Ed's tail started banging on the floor. He was already old by that time. He and my cousin, they'd grown up together, rivals. They had that kind of truce where neither one gets enough of what there is to go around. And then I arrived. I set my bag down, all the clothes I owned, everything. After banging his tail a while, Ed struggled to his feet and came limping over to me. He was always stiff like that at first getting up. Then he'd loosen out. Sometimes I'd even give him a run. Whoa, what's going on? You're leaving. All right, I'm leaving, but I'll say my goodbye to Mary. You see that gate out there? What, is this a trick question? Go. You're nothing but a bad memory for my wife. My wife, not Mary. Okay, I'm gone. Hey, Mary feels sorry for me. I know she still does. She was always the best at that, better than anybody. Except Ed, but that was different. That was love. God damn. Big damn. Hey, you know, your house could use a paint job. Look at Auntie's next door. She put you to shame. Same house, identical, only switched the other way. I never noticed. You don't notice these things till you're grown and come back. What if I'd gotten here to Auntie's when I was 4 or 5 years old, not 8? Maybe my life would have turned out different. I'd have climbed those steps earlier. Ed would have been young, not 80 in dog years. Old Ed. He wasn't too happy. I was always trying to cheer him up, and Annie would say, leave him alone, he's old. Mrs. Bigger, am I right? She's not in. What is it about? You any idea about the people lived here before? No? Val and Edna Woolsey? No. No. You mind if I just sit down here one moment? Yes, I do mind. I think you should go. No trouble, no trouble. I'll just wait out here in the porch for Mrs. Bigger. You think she might take in a boarder? No? You sure? I was what you might call a boarder here once, long time ago. Wait, one thing, this Mrs. Bigger. She got a dog? No, huh? Well, I'll just sit out here for a bit. Ed, he got so's he'd follow me around. Never my cousin, just me. I'd run over next door to Mary's and Ed'd be trying to get up, his tongue hanging out. Mary and me would spray him cool with a hose. Ed snapping at the spurt of water, irritable like an old man. But even clean Auntie wouldn't let me sleep with him. Now he was a dog, he had to sleep out here on the porch, right over there in that corner. Finally Auntie let me sleep out here too, so long as I used an old blanket and hung it over the back rail to air. She didn't even tell me the night before. She told me on the morning it was going to happen. She said I could come or I could stay, but no matter how much I carried on, they were taking Ed to the vet down in Spokane. My cousin was sad, sure, but he saw no good from going with us. Old Ed, he'd saved my cousin's life that time. Otherwise, no one would have guessed to look down the well. It wasn't really a well, it was one of those sinkholes left over from when mining brought in more money around here than logging. But there's no doubt my cousin would have died. He was out like a light down there. He must have pried up the cover, always looking for trouble. And last night I hear he sells mining futures. Ed knew something was wrong. He wouldn't follow me to the post office that day, but he wouldn't lie down either. So finally I followed him over next door, over to where that oak is pushing aside the fence. There wasn't any fence then, and Ed circled the hole, whining. All he could do was whine. His bark by then was a laugh. He wouldn't even try. He just circled and circled the way he always did when getting ready to lie down. Round and round he'd go, putting off the pain to his joints till finally he'd bend him. First his hind legs, then his forelegs drop onto the floor with a yelp, then letting out a long sigh and maybe a fart. What's the problem, officer? You got the wrong party. Where are you taking me? To the tank? I'm going to the tank for telling the housekeeper about Ed? Ed was a former tenant here, if that's any of your business. That was Mrs. Bigger, not any housekeeper. There you go. Everybody's out to play tricks on me. So are you guys going to read me my rights? Obviously not. Easy. Why, we're going this way? Where are you guys taking me? Nelson? Is this legal? What happened to the tank in my hometown? I've been in here, you know, spent a night. So Mary came and got me out. Hey, Mary's my next door neighbor. She'll want to know about this. That was the last time she saved my ass. Pardon my French. Yeah, but even before that, even after that, after being saved, my cousin didn't love Ed any better. No one's to blame. It's not like you ever make yourself love somebody. Not even if that somebody saves your life. You still have to leave. Hey, you know what? You're saving me bus fare, that's what. I rode in the back seat with Ed in my lap. Uncle Val was driving. He and Auntie were talking low-voiced. And I was talking to Ed, telling him it wasn't going to hurt. It'd be like going to sleep is all. I don't need to say that tears were running down my face as well as snot. And Ed let out some farts, Annie riding with her window open. I didn't care. Oh, Ed. And him lying heavy across my lap and I'm burning up like a furnace. Maybe that's why he liked me. That would be the scientific explanation. He was always shivering cold and me sleeping next to him must have warmed him clear through to his old bones. Why are we stopping? I asked Uncle Val. He pulled off at the viewpoint over the bluffs. Now, I've never contemplated suicide myself. You take my uncle on my mother's side, he did the deed, alone in a motel room with pills and booze. And where I live now, the old guy in the next room, one Sunday morning he shot the cancer out of his jaw. Sure, I heard the retort, but I was asleep. Somehow the sound fit into my dream, though I could never recall how, only that it did. A gunshot can fit in nicely. It's not necessarily a bad thing. What you have to take into account are the circumstances. Some people can endure more pain than others. Lack of character, that's what people like Auntie make their judgments, reading for weakness. But to grab hold of your own fate like that, to decide, especially when you haven't had a say in much else. Other people shake their heads. Why, him, of all people. I never thought he could do such a thing. Hey, can we stop pretty soon? I gotta take a leak. If I do contemplate suicide, it's to wonder what my neighbor was thinking when he woke up that morning, though I doubt he slept the night before, knowing he was going to do it. And you might take it easy on the curves. I'm getting car sick back here. What's that sound?
That means you gotta wrap her up in a minute.
Okay.